Ever felt like you're trying to catch them all, but your Pokeball keeps missing? It's a tough world out there for us Pokemon trainers. That's why today we're going to... Oh, what's that? Ooh, wrong script. This is a Valorant video. Those aren't Pokemon. Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Today, we're going to be bringing you 5 pro tips that only Gekko mains know. We compiled these 5 tricks from watching countless hours of the best players in the game to teach you quickly everything you need to know about becoming a Gekko main. So without wasting any time, let's get into it right away with our first tip. For starters, let's cover Gekko's flash. Did you know that it doesn't actually give you info until after it's fired? This can actually be useful when playing against Gekko too. Have you ever had it where it makes the noise like it spots you, but then you get out of range before it fires? Did you know that when this happens, Gekko doesn't actually hear anything? Check this out.
Up and away.
There's also a wind up and wind down period for the flash, where it just won't tag anyone at all. For example, here's the flash flying right past someone's face. And here's the flash flying right over their head at the end of its path. These are important things to keep in mind when playing Gekko, because if you want to get the most value out of it, you want to make sure it's been in the air for a second before peeking around a corner, and that it has enough distance at the end of its route to still tag players. Still on the topic of Dizzy, it's an amazing info gathering tool, but too many players just throw this ability away for no reason. For example, instead of throwing Dizzy into A main on ascent for either info or to swing, throw them high into the sky like so. This makes for an easy retrieval, and it's much harder to shoot. As an added bonus, it forces the enemy's crosshair into the sky in some instances. Dizzy is also great at showing direction based off of where it spits its flashes. You can use this when you suspect an enemy is somewhere in order to confirm their location. This is one of the most important things to keep in mind with Gekko. You can flash for yourself, but info flashing and picking Dizzy back up is pretty crazy. So, you can info flash, retrieve Dizzy, and go for a pop flash if you see fit. Pop flashing with Dizzy is insanely strong because it implements crosshair forcing. It's similar to Reyna's Leer, just a bit better in my opinion. By forcing the enemy to react to the flash, you can swing while the crosshair is adjusted mid-air. You must be aware, some players at higher elo will designate one person to shoot the Dizzy, so be careful of that. Another cool piece of tech is bouncing her off the wall in a choke. This will allow you to scan the area and then retrieve her immediately if it's clear. Using this flash solely for info can be good, just remember that there's a lot of uses. Now remember, Gekko is one of the best initiators in the game, but if you are really looking to push your limits with him, it's important that you've mastered the fundamentals. Sure, there are dozens of videos out there that can break down how to do fancy lineups or cool tricks, but rarely do people actually go in depth on the things that actually help you climb. This includes things like your aim mechanics, positioning, movement, and how you play off of your teammates. That's why we went ahead and detailed how to master all of these things in our hour-long masterclass over at SkillCapped. We break down everything you need to know to master the fundamentals, so that way you can go from looking like this to looking like this. Our whole site is also backed by a rank improvement guarantee, so if you don't climb, you don't pay. There's a reason we've been around for over a decade in gaming. It's because our service really does work, and if it doesn't work, you shouldn't pay. Check it out using the link in the description for a discount. Now obviously, Wingman can be used to plant and defuse, but he has a lot of different use case scenarios that people tend to sleep on. The best secondary use is for clearing and swinging with Wingman. A good example where you can use Wingman and pick it back up is when you're clearing out U-Haul. You can throw the Wingman and swing off of it, or swing with them, then proceed to pick your buddy back up. It's also important to note, with the Wingman, you shouldn't be just sending him into sight alone to plant. If it dies, you're basically relinquishing control of the spike to the enemy team. So make sure that if you're using Wingman to plant spike, you already have sight control, or at least your team is running up with the Wingman. Using Wingman to add to the chaos can be a great way to get some extra space. If the enemy team sees Wingman before you, chances are they'll shoot at them and you can proceed to get a pretty free swing off to trade out Wingman. You can also create pressure and a man advantage through the use of Wingman, which is sometimes overlooked. In a 2v2 retake, you can throw Wingman at the spike and essentially turn it into a 3v2 in your advantage. Having the pressure of somebody sticking the spike can force the attackers to make some pretty desperate decisions. Keep in mind, Wingman will only stop defusing if he's shot, or if the last player on your team has died. So even if you get taken out in a 2v2, as long as your teammate is still alive, Wingman will keep defusing the spike. Similarly, in a 1v1, you want to actually bait Wingman a bit more, since if they kill you, you will both die. For this reason, in 1v1s, your life is far more valuable. That's why we'll see Gekko players throwing their Wingman onto the spike from far oftentimes, in an attempt to locate the last player since they'll need to come out of hiding to get him off the spike. You can use Wingman to safely locate whoever is on site and then off the back of that information, win the round. Similarly, when attacking, you can use this same trick to bait enemies out. If you suspect there's an anchor on site, you can throw Wingman in with the spike to hopefully draw out the anchored player's position as they attempt to push him. This is best during the mid-round when the numbers have slimmed down and you're worried there could be someone lurking about on site. With Thrash, it can sometimes be hard to properly land during the lunge. Just know that you can double-click during the lunge animation to detonate early. With that in mind, make sure you're detaining people with actual purpose when using this character. Thrash is good for detains, but if you can't capitalize off them, sometimes it's bad. The detain can be great in retake or post-plant situations to delay, but on a site hit, detaining somebody in CT when you have other options wouldn't be a great use of Thrash. Being able to capitalize off Thrash is great, but sometimes you won't be able to, and that's okay. Just try your best to look for opponents that are easy to capitalize off of or would be impactful if stalled for any amount of time. My favorite use of Thrash is to commit to a site execute with them, proceed onto site, pick up Thrash, fall off site, and then use them for post-plant. This gives two major uses in a single round, one to take site and one to help win post-plant. Maximizing the use of Thrash is quite important, but don't feel bad if you're not able to. If Thrash goes down in a subpar position, it may be wise to ignore going for him. Finally, using your utility together is super effective with Gekko. Here's a great round from Kanga. He throws Wingman to cover stairs, and info flashes high over boat to get info on site. He spots 3 enemies due to his utility usage here: Cypher, Omen, and Jet on stairs. All of Gekko's utility comes together in a neat little package. Dizzy covers the sky, Wingman can cover plants, Mosh Pit is great for flushing out enemies, and Thrash is good for strong executes. Combine your utility to cover multiple angles for your team as you enter onto site with them. The best and worst part about Gekko is that all of his utility can be shot. This sucks because when thrown alone, it can feel pretty underwhelming. But when thrown together, it's nearly impossible for enemies to deal with. They either get blinded or stunned or detained. It's actually crazy difficult to deal with.